Thank you. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the House Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications Committee. I'm going to call this to order. We have a few items of business. First thing I'd like to do, we're going to hear from the public on compressed natural gas vehicles, and which I think is a very timely and important issue to hear. First of all, I'd like to recognize Representative Doug Holt. Doug, you have a bill that I wanted you to make just a brief presentation on. If anybody has a question from the committee, they can ask. But we're not having a hearing. We're not going in depth on your bill. But just if you'll do that, and then we'll assign it to a subcommittee. Just a brief presentation on your bill.
I won't make a belabored presentation.
And tell us your bill number.
Simply seeks to put some oversight on the process whereby the Georgia Transmission Corp cites lines and uses eminent domain possibly in the process of...
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I think this has been webcast. You need to use a microphone. I'm sorry. So if you'll start over again.
Thank you. House Bill 688 simply seeks...
Comments from the committee? Representative Holt, we're going to put that in a special subcommittee. On that subcommittee, Representative Ernest Smith will be on that, Representative Roger Williams, Representative John Carson, Representative Chuck Martin, Representative Ben Harbin, Representative Michael Dudgeon, Representative Glenn Baker, and Representative Robert Dickey. And Representative Dickey, if you would chair that, I'd appreciate it. And if you will you can set up and have a hearing for Representative Holt on that. Appreciate that. All right. Thank you. Somewhere there's a list. Billy, do you have that list of who's here, who's going to present? Okay, just as background, kind of create a frame for what we're doing today. Again, we mentioned this in a previous meeting, but last year we passed a bill that kind of set up a framework for AGL to withdraw funds from the Universal Service Fund, the State Universal Service Fund for utilities, to begin building compressed natural gas filling stations, and they had a filing with the Public Service Commission that has been approved, and so now we have a beginning point for fleets, taxi cab company, whatever. I mean, we have a beginning for companies that would use, or anyone who would use compressed natural gas, to have more locations where they can get the compressed natural gas. It's an important issue, and I think we'll be looking at more in depth, more things we can do out of this committee real shortly, as a matter of fact. But we had talked about, I think 2 weeks ago, about electric vehicles and charging stations, and that was good. And today we want to talk about and hear from the public on compressed natural gas vehicles, stations, whatever we need to talk about and hear about from the public, and any questions or comments, obviously, from committee members on this very important issue. And I guess here again, one of the bases, whatever the word is for it, is that compressed natural gas, or natural gas rather, the prices have come down so much because of the reserves of natural gas have been found in these shale gas fields, and that the ability to get it out, produce it, have been perfected far beyond what it was a few years ago. So with that, MEAG is here, and I think they would like to make a presentation. Is that correct? Somebody from MEAG here? I'm sorry?
MGAG and municipal gas.
MGAG, okay, well, okay, that'll work too. All right, we need to have, I guess you need to come over someplace, yeah, right here, and because these are, I think this has been webcast, because it is, you need to speak from the microphone. Okay. And if you'll tell us who you are and who you're with, and just a brief explanation of what you're going to talk about.
Great, thank you. Okay, that's good. On behalf of the Municipal Gas Authority of Georgia, we appreciate the opportunity to present today. We'll take just a few minutes, and if there's any questions, we'll be happy to answer any questions also. But what I'd like to do today is really give the committee a view from the Georgia municipally owned distribution system perspective as far as compressed natural gas vehicles, and also maybe a little market information. But where are the municipals in Georgia that own distribution systems? How are they looking really strategically at compressed natural gas? And so that's kind of really the focus of the presentation. We'll talk just a few minutes just to introduce you to the Gas Authority, and then the business case for the municipally owned distribution systems, some of the challenges, and also look at the benefits, and just take questions if there are any. The Municipal Gas Authority of Georgia, we're a nonprofit natural gas joint action agency formed by the General Assembly back in late 80s with the advent of gas industry restructuring, governed by a 9-member board of directors that come from our municipals, and we serve 78 member municipals in 5 states, and most of those, 64 of those, are in the state of Georgia. And you can see meeting the natural gas needs of about 230,000 customers and working off of 3 major interstate pipelines. Our mission statement, basically providing economical gas supply and also helping our members in the area of business and market development as well. As you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, there is a very compelling case for natural gas vehicles, and you really cited some main reasons for that, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But just a couple of benefits that you can see: natural gas vehicles emit far less pollutants than their gasoline counterparts, almost 29% less greenhouse gas emissions than the gasoline vehicle. A tremendous amount of supply now, and really that has been the game changer, and we'll talk a little more in depth about that with another slide. There's a wide variety of NGVs that are available today from the OEMs, really in the medium and the heavy duty market, missing some availability in the light duty or the passenger vehicle, which is an issue. But we do have those available through small volume manufacturers where the conversions are done. The NGV fueling industry is emerging. I think a key word there is emerging. Currently, there's about 1,000 NGV fueling stations in this country, and I think a key number there is less than half of those are public access. So again, you can see this is very infant, and it is emerging. You cited the fuel cost, 30 to 50% lower fuel and O&M cost, and really that's the model that provides the payback for the incremental investment. Major benefits of CNG. Again, it's amazing to look at some of these stats, but it wasn't that long ago in the 60s and 70s where if you looked at U.S. production compared to imports, we were basically at 90% of what we used in oil we used in this country was produced in this country back in the 60s and 70s. And of course, that's flipped. We currently only produce about 25% of what we use in this country today. today. So this is where natural gas and the domestic reserves that we have available, if you look today at the amount of natural gas that we have, the proven reserves, which this number continues to change, we use about 22 trillion cubic feet a year in this country, and we've got enough gas now to the proven reserves to last 120 years at that demand level, and that number again keeps changing as more of these reserves become more available to the drilling process. Natural gas vehicles are a great fit for many fleet applications, and you can see and very quickly see how the municipal would view the advantage here. But certainly, municipal fleets make a good application. Refuse vehicles and the truck fleets, these return to base models where you're out and in, because again, this is where you can get some of the really advantage of what we call the time fill, which is a hookup overnight fill. And here you can see the other applications: school districts, buses, maintenance, transit, short haul deliveries, and other return to base models. The business case for municipal gas systems, or really municipally owned distribution gas systems, is that our municipals provide the retail service. So you can see where the natural alignment is, and we've got we operate fleets. There's municipal fleets, and then within the service areas, there's opportunity for also private fleets and these public-private partnerships that can be put into play. Also, you'll see in a moment where we've mapped out some strategic locations along the interstates, and so as we anticipate consumer demand expected to grow in this market, we want to be. I think the critical part for our municipals is planning at this point to be prepared for that. Let me go on here very quickly. Here's really kind of what I wanted to share with you, just to make you aware of some of the planning that's taking place right now. Certainly there's a return that has to be received off capital investment, and so getting the infrastructure is the critical thing right now. As I mentioned through the numbers that I shared a minute ago with you. So in terms of making infrastructure available, the municipals looking internally first, assessing the municipal fleet, developing infrastructure and fleet conversion plans in maybe a 3 to 5 year planning process. And so you really begin to look at the municipal fleet as a way to make a business case to build out the infrastructure. At the same time, looking externally within the service area, are there other return to base businesses that could help in funding the capital structure as well, the infrastructure, always with the end in mind that eventually we definitely want the public access, want consumer access. Now certainly that could come through home refueling as well, but both home refueling and also access stations is the end vision here. So really, as we and I would say several municipals are at different phases in terms of where they are right now. Some are at the RFP level with refuse or trash vehicles. Some are just in the process of planning at this point in time. But the key thing that we're working on right now is basically just the strategic planning and building fleet replacement, vehicle replacement within the municipal planning process. Key considerations, again, we talked about being the retail provider, looking at leveraging public-private partnerships. Certainly rate of return capital requirements are important in the models we're putting together. Certainly any tax incentives that we could move upstream to contractors and those companies that would build out infrastructure would be valuable. And working with NGV service companies that are emerging, the construction, maintenance, and conversion of finding those companies to work with. And lastly, the joint action opportunities is that one thing is a joint action agency that we can leverage our capital to begin investigating some really corridor investment. And again, this is I would put more into the midterm range of the municipal plan that we're looking at. But you can see some of the municipally owned distribution systems here, and some of the main corridors on 20, 85, 75, and 20. to actually build out potentially LNG, CNG stations, LNG for the long haul, and also making compressed natural gas available too. So again, this is a key consideration just in its infancy right now. The task we have is to put forward a plan to our board by mid-year. Challenges, again, taking this mainstream, to where we've got enough stations to support consumer demand and then building consumer demand. The cost of home refueling cost and conversion is an expense that the market needs to overcome. The OEM availability, we mentioned the passenger vehicle and making those or having more of those available. Again, it's interesting that the manufacturers have these cars ready, and they're making them internationally. There's 12 million vehicles worldwide, 120,000 in the U.S. So we know that the vehicles are available. There's just not enough consumer demand here in the country for them. So it's an infant market. But again, just to emphasize the benefits, you can see the economics. If you convert it over to a gas per gallon equivalent, we've done some models where our prices would be on $1 to $1.50 a gallon equivalent at today's prices. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions from the committee, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Questions from committee members?
Yeah, once.
Okay. We have to share these microphones somehow. So.
I can talk loud.
Okay. Well.
The
you really need to do talking to Chairman because it's been webcast and that's the only way they can hear you. If one of your constituents out there is watching you right now.
Okay, you mentioned that there were like 120,000 vehicles, and that this was a vehicle that was available. Now, does that mean that some company has these already manufactured, or you got to retrofit them?
Yeah, there's currently 120,000 approximately natural gas vehicles currently at use today in this country. So again, that's a small number. So
I understand that, yeah. And I know some people that have had theirs retrofitted.
Right.
My question is, can you buy one from a manufacturer that's already ready to go without having to be retrofitted?
Yeah, the Honda makes a passenger vehicle, Honda CNG, that is from the manufacturer. So
okay, I just saw in this morning's paper though some lady in small claims court got 9,000 back because Honda claimed her car would get better gas mileage than and it didn't. So
yeah, well, the last news that we got from Honda, it spoke to the Honda national spokesperson that they're actually mainstreaming the Honda CNG from the alternate fuel vehicle department into their national sales this year. So that was as far as an important piece of news coming from Honda. That's important, and there's several manufacturers that are currently looking at prototypes right now. So again, it's still a very infant market.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Question. Each time, the way this thing works in here, you have to turn the microphones off or the other ones mess up. Just the way it is. Any other questions from members of the committee? I wanted to ask, one of the important components of this is the filling stations. If you don't have those, and you were talking about trying to get them along the corridors and things like that, I'm just wondering, in these other countries where there are many more of these CNG vehicles, I mean, do you have any idea how who finances those, and how who builds those in those countries? Are they government subsidized, or is it all different from different places, or how does that work?
Yeah, it is different in different places, but it is largely upfront government subsidized. So that's where, and again, I hate to put just kind of a general blanket statement over all of that, but you do see a lot of government subsidies for the fueling in other countries.
Okay. Well, so with you all, I mean, there are stations that are within your all's purview or within the.
Yeah, we've got two of our member municipals that have fleet stations right now.
Okay, right.
And one sells to a university for a bus transit system, and then you've got another one that doesn't sell to the public, but operates 50% of its municipal fleet with CNG. And again, it's really predicated on the business case. I mean, paying $1 gallon equivalent to either $3.50 to $4 for gasoline and diesel, respectively.
So were those stations, were those financed then by municipal tax money? Is that how they were built?
Yeah, these stations were basically funded by the municipal. I know one member specifically was funded by the municipal. The other case where the university is being served was actually the station was built by the transit operator that is contracted with the university, and the member just simply provides the natural gas.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I appreciate. I mean, it just seems that that's just obviously. I mean, I'm not discovering something here that nobody knows, but that's just a key component to it. Because you don't have the station out there.
It's key. Yeah, it is key.
Okay, I think Chairman.
I mean, inquiring minds want to know. I mean, what, University of Georgia, is it Athens? I mean, where Augusta State?
Yeah, this is Georgia Southern. The city of Statesboro.
Okay,
is,
that's what I mean.
Yeah,
They deserve.
Absolutely, I understand.
The credit or the blame, I guess they can decide. I would say the credit, in this case. But do you know, if I can follow up with that, I mean, the University of Georgia has a large bus fleet. Are they not using any compressed natural gas? I mean, it's not your job to know, but would you happen to know?
No, I don't. Now, that may be something that would be in the AGL service area, so that may be something AGL can address. Mm-hmm.
Representative Smith, I don't even know whether my microphone's on or off, but...
No. I have a question for you.
Sure.
Thank you. What safety measures will be implemented for theft, depreciation, anything of that nature? What safety measures will be implemented?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think, and also, too, while we say that the market is new and in its infancy, it may be better to kind of reframe that. The market is not new. I mean, compressed natural gas vehicles and fueling infrastructure has been around for some time. If you remember in the 80s, there was a real big push in the industry for compressed natural gas vehicles. I'd better frame it to say the technology has improved, not necessarily on the fueling side, which is really simply just compression, but more on the vehicle side, where you do have improved efficiency of the engines themselves, and also too, if you look at the safety record, and these are governed through EPA certification, so you've got very stringent safety requirements that go into the vehicle. So the safety record is, I would just say, very good, and it's and really compared to other countries where you see safety, it's very good.
A companion question: what about the safety measures at the actual fueling and refueling stations?
Mm-hmm. As far as the station itself, again, I can really talk more to the vehicle. Not really familiar. This is I'll lean on my clean energy counterpart back here to address that question.
Representative Frazier.
Well, you might have just answered my question, because you might not be able to answer this question.
Sure.
So it was about the delivery of the compressed gas to the stations. What's the delivery method? Can they answer that?
Yeah, I would let, as far as delivery of the gas, the compression required, or just where is it?
Well, while you're talking about that, Chairman and I were just talking. What is the PSI on the vehicle itself? What's your PSI on that? Yeah,
I'm going to again let the clean energy folks answer that. But a typical tank in the vehicle at 3,600 PSI, or the cylinder. So again, the stations, I think, are going to vary. But I'm going to let my clean energy counterpart answer that. He'll have more of that information.
All right. Is he here?
Oh, he is. Yeah.
So as far as the stations go, they meet, all regulations. Fire marshal inspects them. We have 24-hour monitoring of pressure and so forth. we just tap into the pipeline that's there and run the gas to our compressors. So
That's there?
Yeah.
You mean, so basically if it's up and down, you know,
Sure.
Freedom Parkway out there.
Right here,
Yeah.
the station.
So you just tap it into the just like a house would?
That's exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'd be the same natural gas you'd use for your water heater, you'd use for vehicles as well.
To phone back on here, I'm going to have to, you have to turn that off. I'm going to have to invoke some of my past experience as a first sergeant. You'll have to direct questions through the chair, and anybody speaks has to speak through a microphone because it's been webcast. So, I mean, you were asked the question, so, but, yeah. Other question? Okay, Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it on? Do you have a picture of one of these filling stations that we can see right now? And you said currently we have 1,000 stations in the United States. So how many more stations are we projected to build, and where will they be located? And can I recognize one of these if I'm driving down the road, or if I go into a service station? Are they attached in there, or what?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And us being in the distribution business, I'd rather defer to a company that's that's actually in the station business, and that's Clean Energy who's following me here. So you'll have a better perspective, I think, with when Clean Energy answers that. Yeah.
I apologize.
Yeah.
I apologize for the logistics in this room. It's just the way it's set up. It's not set up ideally for committee meetings. Actually, many of you recall, this is the room that the industry committee, which this committee came out of, this is traditionally the room the industry committee used to meet in all the time, every committee meeting. So it's good in a way, but the logistics of the microphones and the sound is just not great. Chairman Martin.
Any further, but to alleviate Representative Smith and perhaps Representative Frazier's, I on my own nickel, by the way, flew to California and toured some of the clean energy facilities. And you would see they look very much just like a gas station. The device that goes into the car is a bit different, but correct me if I'm wrong, sir, you have the same type of, if you drive off with it hooked to the car, it breaks away and shuts down immediately. All of the safety mechanisms are in there where you can go fill your car on your own without assistance. So all of the safety mechanisms are in place just as they would be for a gas, and in many cases it may be less dangerous than gas, because if gas spills out on the ground, it will ignite. If natural gas goes up in the air, it typically dissipates and will not, in fact, ignite. But I think when you see the gentleman's presentation, you'll see how easy they would integrate into the communities.
Other questions, comments? Last thing I'll ask you will be the same thing I ask each presenter, and that is there anything that you would suggest that the General Assembly can do to help in this area?
Yeah, I just as we begin as municipally owned distribution systems begin to look at how to develop this market, I would say, and as you look at states like Utah, California, where the market seems to be developing, there's you see utility commitment is key in that, but also state commitment is key. So in other words, where most of these fueling stations, we mentioned the 1,000, where most of these fueling stations are, is where state incentives are available. And so that's so the utility commitment and the state commitment, I think, will be key.
One more question. What kind of, in those states that they have state incentives, the states have incentives, what kind of incentives do they have in place, do you know?
Yeah, I can get you specific information on the Utah model. We were just looking at that this morning, but I can forward information. I'd hate to speak and be out of turn there, but I know there's incentives for conversion and incentives for infrastructure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
AGL is next up. And again, if you would introduce yourself and tell us who you're with and just kind of briefly what you're going to talk to us about.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm David Weaver, Vice President of Government Affairs for Atlanta Gas Light and AGL Resources. Thank you for having me today. It's been a year since I spoke to the committee last about the proposal that Atlanta Gas Light was currently had pending before the Public Service Commission, and we very much appreciate the leadership of Chairman Parsons and your Chairman Schaefer in bringing forth the initiative to amend the law on Universal Service Fund to make it clear how we intended to use the Universal Service Fund to promote more filling stations for CNG vehicles throughout the state of Atlanta was in the public interest and was the right thing to do. What I wanted to do today was give you a brief update on our program, where we stand and what the timeline will be, but mainly just to leave myself available for as many questions as the committee may have. There's a document that was sent to you prior to my arrival that's, I think, a 17-page summary, which is also on our website. This is a document that was prepared following the Public Service Commission's order approving our program that takes into account all of the rules and parameters that we've created and that the PSC adopted for the public to participate in the CNG program. Using the Universal Service Fund in our 2011 program, the PSC approved $11.5 million approximately for AGL to deploy to build fueling infrastructure at stations that would be owned by private companies. So it's truly a public-private partnership. We, as a utility, are clearly interested in this space and in making investments in CNG, but because of our unique deregulated market here in Georgia and the existence of the Universal Service Fund, we thought it was important for us to help seed the market by using a limited amount of money out of the Universal Service Fund to encourage private investment from companies like Clean Energy, American Fuel Systems, and others that are here in the room today that have experience in providing retail services to their fleet customers and individual customers, and we were very pleased by their participation throughout the Public Service Commission's process and up till now. The order was approved by the Commission in November, Terry? I think it was November. And we were directed to put an RFP, a request for proposals process together that would be issued by March 1st of this year, so a little over 30 days from now, that would make these funds available to qualified applicants. And what we are defining as a qualified applicant is a company with demonstrated experience in the compressed natural gas or alternative fuel industry, a company who had customers, fleet customers primarily, that were ready to use CNG now, so that the fueling infrastructure was put at locations and at stations where customers were ready, willing, and able to use it right away, so that these would not become white elephant investments throughout the state of Georgia. And someone who was committed to a minimum throughput at each of those stations. So it's not a Field of Dreams program. It's a program where we're willing to work with the Commission to put up Universal Service Fund money using assets that we would own as the utility at these stations, but only where there is a qualified retailer ready to go and a company with vehicles ready to consume that CNG in year one. So we're asking that they demonstrate approximately a 20% capacity utilization at that station. I guess what that means is if you had a station that would process 100,000 gallons of CNG equivalent a year, that entity would be able to demonstrate a use of about 30,000 gallons. So it's about approximately 30% of that station size. But that is what, as Commissioner Everett would refer to it, that is the chicken and egg syndrome being solved. We're putting the fueling infrastructure in place at the same time the fleet customers are putting their vehicles into the market. The other interesting development, and I know Clean Energy is much better versed at this, and American Fuel Systems as well, because they're participating. There are 2 public stations right now operating, and there are 4 or 5 more on the drawing board that will be open within the next 12 to 18 months. Most of those receive funding from federal grants and Clean Cities grants of varying natures. So our program was designed to supplement that. We're not looking to compete with those stations. We're looking to help build a network that would expand the availability of CNG to more fleets and more individual customers beyond what those stations can reach. The program described by the Municipal Gas Authority, again, works perfectly with the concept of our program, because our program is limited to putting stations only in AGL service territory. So where our service territory stops and a municipal starts, to the extent that there are fleets that are served by that municipality, they can be served completely. We're not competing for that business. We're actually augmenting that business by making stations available in more locations as those fleets might travel further distances from their home base. The program will start March, as I said. It's about a 60-day review and approval process, 60 days to get the responses back, 30 days for us to review and award contracts, and another 60 to 90 days for us to finalize all of the legal paperwork to be able to award money to these private entities where we will install the CNG equipment at their stations. So if all works well, by the 1st of next year, there will be at least one, if not several, CNG stations up and running in Georgia within AGL service territory under this USF program. So with that, let me stop and see if there are some questions, not only about my program, but generally. I'll qualify this before we go in. I'm not an engineer. I don't even pretend to be one. I'm a meager lawyer trying to understand this new industry that I've been drawn into. So I may defer some of those to my industry colleagues that may follow me.
Okay. Questions? Chairman Martin.
A couple of questions I have, and I'm wondering, I'm for this concept, and forgive me for those members of the PSC are here, but I'm wondering why we had to go about it this way, because what bothers me about this is the free market works pretty well, and you're talking about doing an RFP and deciding where things go, and they have to do this. I'm convinced that if private capital were doing it all, the private capital would decide if it was the right place. So I'd ask you, and I know that's done, and there was legislation that said it could be done in the PSC, but why take the universal fund money and build it out? Why not just let the private people build it from your trunk line to the place? And I mean, that's water that's been covered, so don't feel like you got to take too much time. We can do it offline if need be.
Richard has promised to yank me back if I get too long-winded. It's an excellent question. The fact is that private investment had only occurred at one station with some limited success initially. I think the clean energy station down at the airport has been in existence for about 2 or 3 years now, and it's really starting to hit its economic upswing. But beyond that, every other station in Georgia that's open to the public has been funded either by federal money or by AGL's ratepayers. The station on Whitehall Street was put in under our V52 rate, and we paid for the fueling infrastructure at that station, and then they paid us a rate to recover that. So it was a public-private partnership back then. What we've done is take advantage of a capital infrastructure program through the Universal Service Fund. Instead of putting underground pipes in the ground, which we've been doing every year since the legislature passed the Deregulation Act in 1997, we brought those facilities above ground to use those as an inducement to attract private capital. There is no state in the nation that has built stations completely independent with just private capital. Where there have been private capital simply for the fueling infrastructure, it was because they had a customer who had received substantial incentives for their vehicles to be converted, and they were able to lock into long-term, large-use contracts. That wasn't happening here in Georgia, so what we were trying to do was bring that private capital to Georgia with a Georgia-focused program as opposed to a program that was focused nationally.
Fair enough. If I follow up, Mr. Chairman.
And I apologize.
Not at all. I'd like to talk about more, but we can take it offline. Sure. Following that, here's what I fear, and you get into, and I know everything down here is a scope of practice or territorial. What I fear is this: you have a municipal gas system that sits here, and it's in this circle, and I'll just pick waste hauler X because I know they're a good thing. I won't even pick and I don't have anybody in mind, but let's say that their current fleet sits here, and it's a half mile from AGL Resources territory, and there's another something over there that wants one. It doesn't make commercial sense to build two of those, and I just see this thing coming about that the municipal folks aren't going to let that thing come a half mile into their territory so there can be one station that fuels both people. I just hope we haven't created. Does that make sense?
It sure does.
confusing. You understand, I don't want to get into a territorial thing where now you have to build 2 of these stations within a half mile of each other when as Representative Fraser said, we've got 1,000 around the country and we need a few more to get to places. So I hope we haven't created something that will dumb down the free market system, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and we worked very hard to make sure that that was a priority of ours as well. We think it'll be up to the fleet customers to decide where those locations are going to be. As I said, one of the primary qualifying tests for our program is that the retailer has to show up with a customer who wants to use CNG at the location they've identified. So the free market, the retailer and the customer is going to make the decision about where that location needs to be and how large that station needs to be. They make the proposal to us, and then what we're essentially doing is allocating and prioritizing.
But what if that is but what if that is a half mile inside a municipality where they are delivering the gas? Or are y'all going to, is there something in the PSC's language that's going to allow you guys to be happy and somebody's going to be able to run a line a half mile into somebody else's service territory?
Well, first of all, we respect the service territory boundaries. The municipal territory is theirs and ours is ours. The PSC decides what our boundaries are, and they have a process to decide how those boundaries can come together. If the customer wants a location inside a municipal territory, that is a municipal opportunity to build a station. Atlanta Gas Light is prohibited under the Universal Service Statute from using USF money to extend its facilities into that municipality, and we would not seek to. Whether we're happy or not is really irrelevant. We will respect the law and we will respect that boundary, and our people will work with MGAG and their customers to make that customer happy, because that's what's in Georgia's best interest.
Okay, and I'll leave it at that, but I'm just saying if there are 2 big customers, industrial, because there are industrial places that come together, I just see them being a half mile apart, a need for a single station. It's either going to be in AGL territory or municipal territory, but there won't be a need for 2. I just hope we can find a way to do that, and I'll leave it at that for later.
We support that concern.
Other questions? Back on here, I have a question. This is a Don Parsons type question, so you just have to bear with me. But and I'm trying to recall. Of course, we did have the legislation last year that I was very involved in. I forgot, probably at least half of what we talked about last year. The gas that's actually transported to the station where the station is that gas? The gas itself, is that provided by a marketer?
Yes.
It is?
Yes, sir.
A marketer will provide that gas. So here's then my question. I know we've talked about that there are available, as I recall anyway, there are available equipment that a person can put at their own home, where they can fill their cars up at night if they want to, or whenever they want to do it.
Right.
Which I don't remember how expensive that is, but it's obviously it's fairly, relatively inexpensive. So you have that, where that person is buying his gas from a marketer, obviously, whoever he's contracted with. And then you've got these big stations that are very expensive, and the gas is coming in from a marketer. And I'm just trying to think from private enterprise, why aren't there middle size and less than middle size where there would be an incentive for private people to sell gas themselves? That's kind of what I'm missing, the whole point, because I know, and I mentioned this to several members, but I've heard T. Boone Pickens talk about, and he used the example of with the Model T, and I'll repeat this again, and he made the point that when Henry Ford first decided to mass-produce cars, cars were being built, but they weren't being mass-produced on an assembly line. He was going to be building a lot more, and people could buy them and be a lot cheaper. And he just theorized that, somebody probably did come to Henry Ford and say, well, you're crazy, because if you mass produce these cars and everybody can buy one for $300 or whatever they were, they won't buy them because there's no place to get gasoline. They're going to go down the road and run out of gas. But what happened was then that the mom and pop stores and different people, they saw the possibility, well, they're selling general supplies to the farmers or whatever anyway, so we'll just put in a little tank and a pump, and they come by here and we'll sell them gasoline at a little bit of a profit. And that's how, that's basically, and then they sprang up all over the place, gasoline stuff. Why then, since, you're buying gas from a marketer, and there would have to, I mean, there may not be, but why wouldn't there be different levels of cost? And if a person wanted to, if the costs were not, you know, all that much, why wouldn't they? I mean, why wouldn't they just offer compressed natural? I mean, even if one compressed natural vehicle came by a month or a year, I mean, eventually they would recover their costs. And I mean, can you comment on that silly question?
You bet I can. We've thought about that long and hard, and that's an excellent question. I'm only going to pick on these two because they're both in the room, and if I say anything offensive, they can rebut me. But you have big national companies like Clean Energy who work with at a variety of station designs, but one of their primary designs is a standalone station that they build and serve larger fleet customers. It's an unmanned station, and if you want CNG and in some cases LNG, you bring your vehicle to that location. Sitting right behind him is American Fuel Systems from here in Atlanta, who currently owns or services 27 locations, 27, excuse me, existing gasoline and diesel fuel outlets that they're proposing to add CNG as a third product line. So they have a convenience store, they have gasoline pumps, they have diesel pumps. Their proposal is to put a CNG fueling island at an existing location. If just to use Georgia Natural because they're an Atlanta Gas Light affiliate, if Georgia Natural wanted to put a brand up and open a Georgia Natural CNG station, if they wanted to make that investment, they could do that. So there's no limitation on the design of this station or who would get into the fueling business. They just have to have the capital to acquire the land, to design the station, and they need to have a commercial agreement with customers who will use it in order to participate in our program. If they want to do it themselves, they can do that today. They don't need to do anything that AGL is directing them to do unless they want to participate in our program. And we're hoping that if the existing 2 stations, the additional 5 or 6 stations that are on the drawing board, and our stations come together, along with the municipal investment that will come down the road, that'll create enough interest and enough consumer demand that you're going to start seeing CNG more and more readily over the next decade, and fueling stations more and more readily over the next decade. Is that responsive? I think I've followed everything that you asked.
Yeah, you did. That was a great lawyerly answer to my question. Thank you.
At least it wasn't an attempt to be an engineer or an accountant, neither of which I
Thank
can
you.
do.
Appreciate you coming today. I can see it coming. Yes, you may, if you'll turn your mic on.
Along these lines, I'm trying to figure this. You're trying to get the vehicles and the fueling stations matched up at the same time. It's just like the Model T and the gasoline, and that seems to be the problem here. The vehicles cannot be retrofitted to. Can a diesel engine? Because most of the fleet run off diesel. Can a diesel motor be retrofitted?
It can.
Okay. Well, y'all mentioned something about $1.50 equivalent. What's preventing more people from retrofitting and trying to go toward natural gas with those type of variables? Is it the capital investment that is so high in these stations? I'm assuming is the problem.
Well, there are several things. You need a fueling infrastructure to provide fuel, and so if you ask a fleet manager to spend $8,000 or $10,000 per vehicle on a conversion kit, and then spend $500,000 on fueling infrastructure at their property, that's a substantial investment. Our program was designed to take the fueling infrastructure investment away from the fleet manager's decision by allowing them to have contracts with private retailers who would make that investment working with AGL on our incentive, so that they would only focus on the conversion investment or the new vehicle investments that they would have. And they can be substantial, but the payback it's a prudent payback, because right now the differential, I think the retail price for Clean Energy at the airport's about $224. So I paid $370 something driving coming down the other day. So it might take 18 months, but I would begin seeing a return from my conversion or my new vehicle purchase investment pretty quickly if I was regularly filling up with CNG.
I know y'all have questions. My back on myself. I know there are more questions that and we really need to move on.
And I'll
if
be
you don't.
here after the meeting, and I'll
Yeah.
make myself available.
I hate to cut it off because there's good questions. Also, before we have our next presenter, I want to, we have a couple of guests. We have a lot of important people in here, and I'd like to recognize everybody, but we do have former state representative and current PSC Commissioner Doug Everett has joined us in here. And Doug, for those of you who may not know, Doug, kind of kickstarted this thing about, a year and a half ago, something like
2 years ago.
about 2 years ago, and I appreciate that. Also have former state representative and chairman of Appropriations Committee, and now Public Service Commissioner Bubba McDonald. There's Bubba back there. Thank you all for joining us today. Next, I recognize a gentleman from Clean Energy. If you will tell us who you are, introduce yourself. We know you're with Clean Energy and kind of what you're going to talk about.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons, Chairman Parsons. I appreciate it. My name is Dave Mizrowski. I'm a business development manager for Clean Energy, and everyone's kind of pointed towards me during the meeting here, and so I hope to clear things up a little bit for you. Going forward, so Clean Energy, who are we? We are the largest provider of natural gas for fleet vehicles in the country. We service over 600 fleets. Last year we pumped 122 million gallons of natural gas, and we have about 280 natural gas fuel stations. So by far we are the largest provider. We're a public company. We were first formed under Pickens Fuel Company by T. Boone Pickens, and then in 2006 we became a public company on the NASDAQ under CLNE. So we service a lot of markets. We service everything from taxis, transit buses, airport shuttle vehicles, all the way up into the ports, doing regional trucking, and we do both LNG and CNG. It's still natural gas, LNG being a cooled version of it that turns it into a liquid. So we're a vertically integrated company. Not only do we design and build stations and operate and maintain them, we also own IMW, which is the compressor company. So we build our own compressors. We own a construction company called North Star, the largest builder of LNG stations in the country. We also have another company called BAF, which does vehicle conversions for Ford and GM and smaller vehicles, converting them from gasoline to natural gas. So this year we plan on building over 100 natural gas fuel stations, and we'll talk about some of those here in a second. So we are builders and maintainers of natural gas fuel stations. We also do a lot of marketing and consulting work. We have grants.
Can y'all see the slides okay?
Yep. Is that? Okay. We also do a lot of grants and work with government entities and our fleets as partners, trying to organize the grants for them and do the proper documentation and so forth. We do our own vehicle financing when fleets look at rolling this out. How do they go about financing the extra costs and so forth? We have a department that does that. We get paid through long-term contracts with these fleets. So these are long-term commitments, 10, 15-year commitments when we do this. Some of the other items talked about were why fleets? Why are we not working with individuals on their cars and so forth? And the biggest reason is the high fuel volume. The more fuel we can have going through a station, the more cost-effective it can be. So we look for return to base operations, meaning vehicles that will go out 100 to 500 miles a day, but yet they come back to the same domicile. So those are the kind of customers that we work with and we look for. Yeah. Why natural gas? I think we've heard some of this before. You know, today we spend over $1 billion a day importing oil. And so when you look at the long-term effect of this, it's really hurting our national security by sending that money to, in a lot of cases, people that really don't have our best interest at heart, other countries. So when we look at why we should do this, we're trying to displace oil, of turning natural gas, and right now we bring in about 20 million barrels, or we use 20 million barrels a day in the United States, and of that 60% of it is imported. If we could just eliminate 2 or 3 million barrels a day, we could displace a lot of the OPEC oil. Also, natural gas, it still is a fossil fuel, but it's much cleaner, has less carbon atoms than diesel or gasoline, and so therefore it's a lot cleaner, less greenhouse gases. We can talk. And when you kind of compare it to gasoline or diesel, we're in the 20 to 30% less range of greenhouse gases. We meet all 2010 emission standards, and one of the neat things that you can do with natural gas, you don't need a lot of extra equipment on the vehicles. When you have a new diesel that meets 2010 emission standards, you have to add emission catalyst, you have to have diesel particulate filters and some other things on there in order to meet the EPA standard. Well, with natural gas, you don't need any of that extra equipment, so a lot of the fleets really appreciate a less complicated solution. One of the things we like to look at too as we start going forward, you know, in this country right now there's over 150 million people that live in non-attainment areas, in smog related areas. Here in Atlanta, you know, we do have our smog days, and part of using natural gas can alleviate that, especially around ports, rail yards, the big areas where there's a lot of diesel. One of the things people look at is, well, why should I use natural gas? And this is kind of a chart showing the economic advantage, a return on investment chart. So the average truck will be somewhere between 30 to 50 and even upwards of $60,000, $70,000 incremental cost over its diesel counterpart. So when you look at that, most fleets, most private operators look at somewhere in the neighborhood of a 2-year payback on that investment. So in order to get there, they have to be burning a certain amount of fuel. So when you look at this, you see, you know, a city beverage truck or a local beer distributor or soda distributor, he probably runs about 5,000 miles a year annually. And as you can see from the first column there, in order to do that, you know, he's somewhere in the 4 to 10 year payback period, depending on the cost of the incremental upcharge. So he doesn't have a lot of incentive to change over to natural gas if it's going to take him that long to get his return on his money. But then you go to the other extreme, a corridor truck, some truck that you see that has a sleeper on it, an 18-wheeler that's running from here to Lakeland, Florida every day. They're burning a lot more fuel. They're burning somewhere upwards of 18 to 20,000 gallons of fuel. So their costs are much easier to get a shorter payback on the incremental upcharge. So those trucks, those fleets are the ones that are really looking at this, adopting it now. Those are fleets of J.B. Hunt and Swift and some of the other players like that. And so those are easy to do, to change over, to convert. But it's the people down at the other end, the city beverage and distribution, and those are a lot of the trucks that are running around our city here that are the ones that we could help move forward with good public policy. Right now, the chicken and the egg thing was always, didn't have the manufacturers on our side building equipment. A lot of fleets, you talk about conversions, a lot of fleets won't convert because it affects their warranty if they touch the engine while it's under the warranty period. So the manufacturers have stepped up forward, and now you can buy all levels of, all the OEMs make natural gas engines available factory direct. So it's a very exciting time right now for us. It's kind of coming together. So the companies that are stepping forward and looking as forward-thinking companies, people like Coca-Cola here, we're doing test fleets out in California for them, and they're starting to look at deploying them elsewhere. UPS of the world, UPS probably the largest natural gas fleet in the country. Here in Atlanta, a lot of the brown cars that you see running around the city are CNG, that we help them with their private station do that. Other companies, the Cisco's, Saddle Creek Corporation, a lot of these have local terminals here that are all stepping forward and trying to be leaders in the industry to bring this forward. So when we look at the longer term picture, we look at in the next 5 years 300,000 Class 8 trucks switching over to natural gas. We're at the tipping point right now. One of the critical things, we really didn't have an engine that fits a lot of the regional and corridor trucking markets, and that is now being worked on with Cummins Westport and should be released later this year. So those will be that'll be an ideal engine for those trucks, and that is going to help us build out these corridors. When you look nationally, the truck traffic goes up and down the interstates mostly, or in the major metropolitan areas, and we feel there's about 8.5 million Class 5 through Class 8 trucks. So we're looking at converting just a small part in the next 5 years, 300,000 of them. And we feel that's very doable. And so how are we going to do this? One of the neat things that we're working on is we have had investments in our company, and we're putting capital towards building out America's natural gas highway. We have $450 million investments from Chesapeake Energy and T-Boone, Pickens, and some other folks. And so we're going to start building these stations out. And so what we've done is we've partnered with Pilot Flying J, and they have over 500 stations coast to coast, and we're going to put in LNG and CNG facilities at these stations. So we're looking to roll out about 70 public stations at these locations, and then in 2013 adding on to that and 80 to 90 more public stations besides what our normal business is. So as you can look at the map, we're trying to space them out somewhere 250 to 300 miles so that we can take and have the trucks go, you know, from Atlanta to Los Angeles, go through the corridor, Texas Triangle, up and down I-75, up and down I-95. So those are very important corridors, and that's what the trucking fleets want us to do. So this is kind of how we work. This is our LNG station. Very simple. Looks just like a regular fuel station. Driver pulls in. We have a person comes out, fills it up for him. It fuels just like diesel, and he's able to save $1 to $2 a gallon. So that helps offset the cost, the incremental cost of the vehicles. The biggest thing that we see is we're asking for help is not so much on the infrastructure. We have that covered with our investments. We know what we're doing on the station building, but what we're trying to do is help the customers, help the trucking fleets offset some of that original capital that they have to invest in the vehicles. If they could do that, we would have a lot more fleets jumping on board and really pushing this this forward. So the big things that we want you to take away from this is natural gas is cheaper, it is a cleaner burning fuel, and it is an American fuel. It brings jobs here. Some studies have shown upwards of every new truck, natural gas truck that's put on the road, it could bring 3 to 4 jobs along with it. So, and with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? I think Chairman Martin had his hand up first there.
Gentleman related as he was headed to his presentation, could you tell the committee how it corresponds, a quote gallon of natural gas, energy equivalent to a gallon of diesel and to a gallon of, say, 93 octane gasoline? Because I think that helps people bring it in line with the price you're talking natural gas, and then what diesel is now over $4 or right around that. It's not exactly a 1-to-1 on a gallon from an energy ratio, but it still provides a very good return.
That is correct. So right now, the BTU content, the energy content, is really what we measure in this, since you're working with a gas and a liquid at the same time. So diesel is about 139,000 BTUs, and natural gas, a gallon of LNG, is about 92. One of the things we do as a company to make that simple, though, we sell it at the pump as a diesel gallon equivalent or a gasoline gallon equivalent. So you know exactly, if you pull up to our locations, we have 5 here into the Atlanta market, and as we mentioned, it's $2.24 a gasoline gallon equivalent. So you're going to get the same energy content in that gallon as you would a gallon of gasoline. So your fuel economy in the Honda Civic or heavy truck, whatever you were running, would be the same as what you're getting now, very close to it. So one of the things that I didn't mention, and we do have the station in College Park on Riverdale Road by the airport. It covers all the shuttles and the hotel shuttles, parking shuttles, parking spots, a big customer of ours. And it just keeps growing and growing in volume and size. So we have that station that's been around for 2.5 years. We are just having a grand opening tomorrow, and I invite anyone that wants to come in Lithonia. We're having our station up there and open. We're going to be running the station here on Whitehall Drive. Will be CNG. It's going to be all improved. We will also be have stations in East Point and Stone Mountain here that are open now. Okay. So.
Representative Coach Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I on? I don't know. Refueling time. How much time does it take to fill these vehicles?
Sure. So CNG, we size the compressors so that you get somewhere between 3 to 5 gallons per minute. So if you have a 20-gallon fuel tank, take you 3, 4, or 5 minutes. Not very long.
So only one vehicle can come to the terminal at one time?
No, that's
You have several open?
Yeah, we have several, yeah. In College Park, we have 4 hoses, so you could have 4 vehicles fueling at the same time.
Okay. Where in Lithonia this grand opening would take place tomorrow?
It's 10 o'clock tomorrow on Lithonia Industrial Boulevard.
Oh, I know.
I can get you an address after.
I know where that is.
So.
Other questions, comments? That's it.
Good. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Turn that one off if you would. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. Very, very informative. That's all I have on the list. Anybody else from the public have anything they would like to bring to us? Yes, sir.
My name is Raheem Sharania. I'm CEO of American Fueling Systems.
If you will come to the and Raheem, I didn't have you on the list, and I don't want to cut you. I mean, I do want you to speak, but
I'll keep it
but
short.
we are running very short on time now. In fact, we're a little over.
I would just like to introduce our company to the commission. My name is Raheem Charania. I'm with American Fueling Systems. We've recently been awarded the Petroleum Reduction Grant by the Department of Energy to build a station in DeKalb County at 4420 Buford Highway, about 2 miles inside the perimeter, for use by DeKalb County's fleet as well as some of our corporate fleets. We believe this is going to be a very strong year for moving the state of Georgia towards a more viable alternative fuel transportation infrastructure. And the one comment I'd like to leave you with is this. Somebody asked, does it work without the grants, and do we need all of these government support? And honestly, you don't. As a developer and builder of these stations, you don't. The work that AGL Resources has been able to do is going to put a shot in the arm and allow more faster progression to a viable model for alternative fuels. The biggest issue right now is range anxiety. You don't want to drive and run out of gas, and it's not like a little gas tank. You can just go to a gas station and fill up your car. You're going to have to tow the car. If we can eliminate range anxiety by utilizing the funds available to the USF and other sources, the growth of this model and therefore independence of energy in this country can be faster achieved. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have a question from Coach Williams over here.
How many jobs are you talking about in DeKalb County that will bring?
Well, sir, that facility is going to be a UFO, or unattended fueling outlet, so it's not manned by anybody, but we do have contracts with AGL Resources on maintenance. During construction, there's going to be a number of jobs created, and if you'd like, I can send you a copy of our proposal that actually won the grant. It'll give you a lot more information.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Other questions, other comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming. That's all the presenters. Before we close, I just want to say how important I think this issue is. I want, and I think all of us really want, we want our state, we want the state of Georgia to be a leader. We really do. Georgia has been a leader. It's been a leader in the South and been a leader across the country in so many issues. And not only are these things important for us as far as economic development, having less dependence on foreign oil, possibly bringing in, there's arguments that it would bring down, the more that we can provide CNG, that it possibly could bring down the price of diesel for our farmers. A lot of different reasons that I think we need to look very positively at this and do what we can. And but even above all that, for the state of Georgia to be a leader, and here again, Commissioner Everett, I appreciate you having kind of been a leader yourself and bring this to the forefront 2 years ago, and having helped bring it to where it is today. So, and I would just mention, and I'm actually going to be dropping a bill probably tomorrow, and as you all know, tax-related issues have to come through the House because it's the people's house. And that's the way it is. They don't come to the Senate first. I do have a bill that Senator Ross Tollison, I'll give him credit. Ross Tollison has a bill that he's been working on, and he's asked me to work with him on a bill that will provide a tax credit for for the heavier trucks, taxi cabs, and also for building some of these stations. And I think it's a good step, and it can help. It can help our citizens, help with our industry, help with economic development, and help Georgia continue to be and even move ahead in being a leader on energy issues. And I've got the bill, and if some of you have signed it already, if anybody would like to sign on to that, you're more than welcome to come by the office or see me tomorrow and sign on to that. And with that, anything that's on anybody's mind in the committee? Any questions, any comments? I always like to make sure that you have that opportunity to do that before we leave. I assigned a new subcommittee to hear Representative Holt's bill. I'm not sure now if you were on that particular subcommittee. Everybody's on a subcommittee of one or the other, and we assigned that to a special subcommittee, but we don't have to sign them in here. I mean, as the bills come in, I'll be assigning those to subcommittees. So I think we're good on that. Unless there's something else, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.